Hello and welcome. The title of the message today is Heart, Mind, Body, and Spirit. But let's begin by affirming together our opening statement. There is only one presence and one power in my life and the universe, God. I invite you now to take a deep breath with me and release it back to universe, relaxing your body, allowing your mind to become a little more still as you bring your awareness to this present moment right here and right now. We open ourselves to Spirit, the teacher within us. And so it is. Amen. So, heart, mind, body, and spirit. I'd like to begin by reading from the Gospel according to Matthew in chapter 22 and verse 37. One of the Pharisees had just asked Jesus, what is the greatest commandment in the law? And Jesus responds with the words from verse 37. When you look at the Greek translations and the Aramaic translations, there's a slight difference. And I'll explain that as we get into the verse. But I'll read to begin with Matthew, the Gospel according to Matthew, chapter 22 and verse 37 from the Aramaic, translated by Dr. George Lhamsa. Jesus said to this Pharisee, "Love the Lord your God with all your heart, with all your soul, with all your might, and with all your mind." And then, when you look at the King James or any of the other Greek translations, you only get 3. Instead of heart, soul, might, and mind, you get heart, soul, and mind. They leave out this idea of might. And I'd like to explain a little bit about how I read this as our tool for inner growth. This has been my covenant with God, that and verse 38, for many, many years. And I've always taken it to mean with my all, with everything that I have. But I'd like to break it down a little bit into these 4 different, what I'm going to call faculties of mind or centers of being or neural centers. And none of those quite describe what I mean. But this is really just a model of how we can look at our consciousness anyway. This is a model that we can use for our self-observation so that we may know what's going on with our attention. Because what we love is what we give our attention to. So let's begin by breaking this down. Remember the title of the talk. The title of the message is Heart, Mind, Body, and Spirit. And those are slightly different words than what are translated here by Dr. Lhamsa. But I'm going to claim that they have the same meanings, and I'll show you that. So, our heart, that's the first word. We think of it as a center of emotion. We think of it as an organ for pumping blood through our body, and these are true. Our heart is also an organ of divine perception. And I'll read another verse later that talks about that. And all of those are true. The other one is our soul. This is a word that has come to mean lots of different things through the years. Soul, though, is that which is in us that is eternal. That part of us that we might say is our spirit. It is that part of us that does not depend on the body for its existence. The other one is our strength. Our might is the word Dr. Lomsa uses. Our might. Our body. Our physical being. And not only that, but a center of consciousness that is not in our head or our heart, but perhaps it's in our solar plexus. Science has shown that there are neural centers in our body other than our brain. When we think of mind in Western culture, we almost always go straight to the brain, the intellect part of us, ignoring the fact that there is a neural center on the back of our heart. And also ignoring that there is a neural center in our gut, around the area of our solar plexus, that is responsible for all of our autoimmune system. That part of our body that is responsible for healing itself, for bringing itself back into its wholeness. It is also the center for all of our hormones. They call it the lymph system. So we have this center in our heart, center in our solar plexus, and a center in our brain. And all of these minds or centers have particular functions that they do in our body. Now, I'd like to emphasize that this is a model for how we can observe our own behaviors. There's a fourth one that's mentioned, and it's in both the translations from the Greek and from the Aramaic, and that is our spirit, that which they have translated as soul. And that is the internal in us. And we're going to experience it when we are pure in heart. When everything in our body system is in harmony and each of the centers is doing the function that is proper to it. Because it is only out of stillness that we can experience this alignment of our napsha self, our self with a lowercase s, and our ruah self with a capital S. So before I go too much further, I'd like to bring us backwards in the Gospel according to Matthew to the section that we know of as the Sermon on the Mount. It's often called the Beatitudes because the standard translation is "Blessed are." I have heard other Aramaic scholars translate that word that's normally translated as blessed as blissful or joyous. But the one I like in particular is fully ripened. When we are that succulent and juicy fruit that we are meant to be in this world. We are realizing our full potential of having this human experience. And I'd like to focus on just one of these. So I'll be reading from the Gospel according to Matthew, chapter 5 and verse 8. Blessed are the pure in heart, for they shall see God. And what I'm saying that this means, and other Aramaic scholars would agree with me, is that the heart is not only a pump, it's not only a center for our emotional nature, but it is, when we are vibrating from our highest emotional nature, we are pure in heart. When our napsha is in harmony with our ruah, and every single center in our body is harmonized together, we can be said as being pure in heart, because we are vibrating from our highest emotional center. Spirit, that eternal, that divine part in us. And what does it say? When we are pure in heart, we shall see God. We shall perceive the divinity not only within us, but all around us, and in every single person, every single being that we meet, because we all partake in this divine substance. I would like to refer you back to last week when the message was the water of life, and how this water of life is behind and permeating every single experience that we have in this world and beyond. This water of life is substance. It stands behind everything. And we can know this, and we can see this when we are pure in heart. We can experience the divine in everything, ourselves, everyone we meet, all around us, in every being. Now, how is this of practical value to you and I as we go about our walk? As we go about walking our unique spiritual path towards being that fully ripened human being that we each have the potential to be. The first step is our awareness. Where is our attention? I talk about this so much because it is so important. And this heart, mind, body, and spirit is a model and a tool to help us be more aware of where our attention is at any given moment. Perhaps the easiest to notice is our body. We can see our habits very easily when we begin to observe what's going on with our body. Because perhaps that's what we're really talking about, is our habits. Because we can notice when we are in a habitual pattern of our mind, and then we have the opportunity then, when we begin to notice this, to continue with that pattern or to change that pattern. So by observing something as simple as how you walk, especially if you have a sidewalk or a road, someplace that is very easy, where you don't have to pay a lot of attention to where you're placing your feet, you can just begin to walk and notice how you're walking. And if you're having trouble with that, make a change. In other words, take a longer step than normal or a shorter step than normal. Walk a little faster than normal or a little slower. And just notice how it's different. Noticing the difference from your habitual gait, your habitual step, your way of walking. You can also observe this in many different tasks. The body center does so much for us that we're not even aware of. We do a lot of the things that our body does for us out of habit. We learn how to do it, and then so we just don't even have to think about it anymore. Playing a musical instrument is a good example of this. If you're dicing vegetables, that's a really good way. If you're doing it from your moving center, from your body center, then it happens smoothly and safely. But let yourself begin to do it differently, and allow your thinking self, that part of you that's centered in the brain, that we're calling mind today, to begin to be the one that dices the vegetables or begins to walk along the sidewalk. And notice how much more efficiently your body is able to do these tasks than your mind. You see, the body is able to operate with a fine energy that happens relatively fast compared to the energy that is operating from your thinking self, from the brain, from the intellect. So that is a really good way to begin to look at these different mind centers that we have in our being. We can start with our body that's centered in our solar plexus, noticing the signals that our body is giving us throughout our day. Noticing when we begin to alter something that we do habitually, whether it's walking, I'm going to caution you about the dicing of the fruit and vegetables, and also driving a car, because that's another thing that we do from our body center. I used to play a lot of pool when I was younger, and whenever I was in my body center playing the game, my shots were much more accurate, fluid, smooth, and more likely to go in the pocket. But when I started overthinking it, trying to analyze it more with my brain, with my mind, with my intellect, I was much more likely to strike a glancing blow against the cue ball and maybe even completely miss. But moving center, the body, my body knew how to do this. So these are ways that you can look at habits, becoming more and more aware of which of these minds is in operation, whether it is from our heart, our emotions, whether it is from our brain, our mind, whether it is from our body, centered in the solar plexus, or whether it is from the spirit, that part of our heart that is now pure, when our self with a lowercase s is harmonized with our self with a capital S, napsha, the Aramaic word for this self with a lowercase s, and ruah, the Aramaic word that directly translates as breath, holy breath. When these two are in alignment with one another, and each is doing the function that it is most suited for, we are in harmony. We are pure in heart. And we are able then, through Spirit, to see the divinity in ourselves and in everyone we meet. I thank you for your attention this morning, and my prayer is that something that was said during this message will touch you and become just what you needed for your unique spiritual path. I'm not asking you to believe me. Just put this tool to use and see how it is effective or not in your life. Let's close by praying our prayer for protection. The light of God surrounds us. The love of God enfolds us. The power of God protects us. The presence of God watches over us. Wherever I am, God is. Thank you.